talk will be in two parts. The first part, we will go over some of the pilgrimage sites that Sri Ramakrishna himself visited. And the second part will be places that are associated with Sri Ramakrishna, for example, meetings at devotees' place, etc., which have now become pilgrimage sites for followers of Sri Ramakrishna. And lest I forget, I would like to acknowledge Prithvish, who helped me a lot in gathering all this material. So he is not able to be here because he had to go back to Kolkata, but his contribution is immense. So let us look at why pilgrimage is essential or is necessary in spiritual life. And we are very lucky. We had a series of talks by Shrikant about a year ago. And I have borrowed some of his ideas in this slide. So you may go to a pilgrimage to fulfill a vow, to get the favor of the divine, family tradition, atonement of sins, time away from daily routine. And there is a kind of a flip side to this as well. The flip side is that some people, they think that the interruption of their daily discipline is too much to overcome. And I know a lady, extremely devout, extremely pious, but she never ever went to a pilgrimage in the last 20 years or so that I know of. And whenever I would ask her, she would say, well, I have Narayan at home. I mean, in the Hindu tradition, people have deities installed in the altar in their home. And so she would say, I have Narayan at home. And if I go to a pilgrimage, who will take care of my Narayan? So there is a flip side. But in general, we all, most of us, we think that, well, if we can get away from our daily routines and intensify our practices, spiritual practices, that would be so much beneficial for our spiritual progress. Then people go for the darshan, which is the vision or the manifestation of the divine, receive spiritual counseling from saints, because typically in pilgrimage sites we have saints who have their ashramas there, and counseling from them is invaluable. Self-reflection, contemplation, spiritual upliftment, and of course all this kind of contributes to progress in spiritual life. But I do want to kind of point out that pilgrimage and tourism are not synonymous. Tourism basically means you want to go to some place for whatever reason, and you make some plans. But in pilgrimage, not only do you want to go to a place, but the process itself is a spiritual practice. And for pilgrimage, austerity is very essential. And this doesn't really mean that you kind of beat yourself to death. What this means basically is that you adjust. The power of adjustment is very important. And the company of fellow devotees is very critical. So when you go on a pilgrimage, you shouldn't really try to separate yourself from the rest, because this whole atmosphere with the devotees, that is extremely helpful. Now, when we say pilgrimage in Sanskrit, it's called tirtha, and the word comes from basically the steps, tir, the steps to a river or a ford. Diana Eck, for example, who's a professor at the Harvard Divinity School, she has encapsulated this very well. She says, a tirtha is primarily associated with the great acts and appearances of the gods and heroes of Indian myths and legends. As a threshold between heaven and earth, it is not only a place for the upward crossings of people's prayers and rites, it is also a place for the downward crossing of the gods. So, pilgrimage sites, that's why they become so important, because it's at this threshold. So, when we talk of a pilgrimage, there are kind of three phases associated with it. One is, as I said, before you go on a pilgrimage, you should prepare yourself, you should contemplate, reflect. Then the journey itself, and then after we visit the place, the last process is also extremely important, which Sri Ramakrishna used to say as chew the cud. And I remember just a few weeks ago, Swami Chetanananda ji gave a retreat here, and he talked about his experience in the sense that when he went to Banaras, Swami Hari Premananda, a disciple of the Holy Mother, who was in Banaras at that time. So Swami Hari Premananda, Hari Prem Maharaj took Chetanananda Maharaj to the Vishwanath temple. In Banaras, the Vishwanath temple is the prime importance place. And we'll talk about it a little later because Thakur himself, Sri Ramakrishna himself visited it. But in this case, Swami Hari Premananda led him, Chetanananda ji, to the Vishwanath temple. And Vishwanath temple is very heavily crowded place. So there's a crowd that kind of pushes you all the time. You don't really get to spend too much time in front of the linga. So as they came out, Chetanananda ji was trying to get out and come out of this complex. And Hari Premananda Maharaj said, no. Sit here on a bench. Meditate for 15 minutes. Think of what experience you just went through. So that Sri Ramakrishna used to say, chew the cud. And let us read a couple of sentences from Sri Ramakrishna's description. This is page 605 of our Tuesday text. So this is section 4.3. The master taught us how to, within quotes, chew the cud after visiting places that are endowed with a special manifestation of God. He said, as cows eat their fill of fodder mixed with oil cake and water, then sit and happily chew the cud. Likewise, after visiting temples and holy places, one should sit in a secluded spot to ruminate and become absorbed in the godly thoughts that arose in the mind there. After visiting sacred places, one should not immediately put one's mind on worldly things and drive holy thoughts away. If that happens, those godly thoughts cannot leave permanent impressions on the mind. So this chew the cud, again, very important. And the next paragraph basically talks about Sri Ramakrishna's admonition. So it continues. Once some of us went with the master to visit the Divine Mother in Kali Ghat. Kali Ghat is a very famous Kali temple in Kolkata. So the special manifestation in that ancient Devi temple and the living presence of the Divine Mother in the master produced immense joy in the devotees' hearts. On the way back, a devotee was persuaded to go to his father-in-law's house and pass the night there. When he returned to the master the next day, the latter asked him where he had stayed the night before. When the master learned that he had been at his father-in-law's house, he said, "What? You saw the Divine Mother? You were supposed to ruminate on thoughts of her and of your visit to her, but instead you passed the night at your father-in-law's like a worldly man?" After visiting a temple or a sacred place, one should be absorbed in holy thoughts and contemplation. How can divine feelings settle in the heart otherwise? So we see this chewing the cud, very important part of the pilgrimage. Right, so then the question could be asked, well, of course, we have some need for a pilgrimage. What would be Thakur's need? He was an avatar, and as we just saw in the prayer, avatar Varishta. So what was his reason to go for a pilgrimage? And one can glean some points, fulfill the wishes of devotees, and in this case, the primary devotee would be Mathur Babu. Mathur Babu, the son-in-law of Rani Rashmani, he was the temple manager, and he, in fact, persuaded or convinced Sri Ramakrishna to go on a major pilgrimage, which we'll talk about learn about the spiritual and material condition of society. So Swami Sardananda writes in this book, Sri Ramakrishna in his Divine Play, that even avatars need to know what is the condition of the society, and what better way to do that than to go to a pilgrimage and mix with people. Elevate the importance of the site, and Sri Ramakrishna always used to say this is all because of Divine Mother. So the prompting of Divine Mother, meet other saints, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, the divine wants to enjoy bliss of his own nature. But it is very interesting that when Mathur Babu requested Sri Ramakrishna to join on this pilgrimage, Sri Ramakrishna agreed, and we'll talk about it. But there was one pilgrimage site that Mathur Babu wanted to go, Sri Ramakrishna refused. And we'll talk about why did he refuse. And that the last question for us would be, okay, we have some need to go to a pilgrimage. We may look at Sri Ramakrishna's pilgrimage visits, but how is it going to really benefit us? And the answer, I think, is that when we envision these acts of Sri Ramakrishna, then in meditation there is a term that we use, Leela Dhyana. Leela Dhyana means when you sit down to meditate, you think of the divine acts. And so this is a wonderful object of meditation to begin with, the pilgrimages associated with Sri Ramakrishna. So with that, let us look at his major pilgrimage. He went on a major pilgrimage in January of 1868, and as I said, Mathur Babu kind of arranged everything. And this was a big entourage. This was close to about 100 people who went on this pilgrimage. And Mathur Babu, we read that he hired 3 railway compartments in the Indian railways of that time. And maybe even today, you can hire a full compartment. And the way it works is, well, you attach it to some scheduled train. Let's say a train goes from A to B, and this compartment is at the end of this train. And so from A to B, when it goes, they detach this compartment. And the train then goes for C, but the compartment stays. The people get down, and in this case, the pilgrims, they go on the pilgrimage, they come back, get on the train, and then some other train would take them some other place. So this used to be pretty common. And so Mathur Babu, he kind of rented 3 railway compartments, 1 second class, 2 third class. And the first place they visited was in those times it used to be Bihar, today it's called Jharkhand. It's an adjoining state to Bengal. And this is Bodhanath Dham, Deoghar, which is what we call a Jyotirlinga. Jyotirlinga is 12 sites associated with Shiva, which are, in the Sanskrit word is Swayambhu. Swayambhu means they have kind of come of their own. Nobody really built those Shivalingas. So these are considered very Jagrata, very potent pilgrimage sites. And here, when Sri Ramakrishna went to Bodhanath Dham, and he saw so much poverty, people hungry and almost without clothes, he was so upset that he asked Mathur Babu, there was a group of people, he asked Mathur Babu that please give them cloth and give them food. And Mathur Babu initially kind of objected because it was not in his budget or whatever. But Sri Ramakrishna said, no, if you don't do it, I'm not going anywhere else now. So Mathur Babu had to concede, and he did so. So from Bodhanath Dham, they went to Banaras. Banaras, as we just heard from Vishwanath, almost every sincere spiritual seeker in India wants to go to Banaras, at least once. And its history is so rich, spiritual history. There are other historical facts as well. We will not get into that. But Kashi, which is kind of considered the old city, I mean, Kashi is so old that people say, well, it's ageless, and considered very holy city for Hindus. In fact, for Buddhism, Sarnath is very, very close to Banaras. So a lot of Buddhists also come to Banaras for their pilgrimage. And this is 1868. Thakur, Sri Ramakrishna, was so absorbed spiritually in this atmosphere of Banaras that he refused to answer nature's call. So he would stay outside the city of Banaras, and when he would come to Banaras and come to the Vishwanath temple, he would not answer nature's call. So extremely, extremely observant in that sense. And Banaras, of course, is famous for its what we call the ghats. The ghats are nothing but, as you can see, the steps on the banks of the Ganges which lead to either a temple or a cremation place or some ashrama. So it's a wonderful sight. And in the evening we have the Ganga Arati, which is very spectacular. So Thakur also would sit on these banks for hours together. And as I said, the main place in Banaras is the Vishwanath temple. So Thakur also visited this temple multiple times because he stayed in Banaras for a number of days. And as I said, the ghats, they are in such a way that the two ends kind of the city, the two ends are two crematoria. And the left end, if you are facing Ganges to the west, I guess. Yes, if you are facing the west, to the left is what is the Manikarnika Ghat. It's a kind of a very special crematorium for Hindus. The rush, if you may call it that, of cremating dead bodies is so much that they say that in this ghat, the fire never dies. I mean, so there's always some fire being lit for cremating a dead. And again, you might think it's kind of a little gross, but many people have said that it's a wonderful place for meditation. I mean, there are many monks of the Sri Ramakrishna order who have recounted their wonderful experiences when they have sat down in meditation whole night on this ghat. So, and Thakur also, of course, was there. And let me read a few lines from Thakur's experience at the Manikarnika Ghat. This is page 610. This is 4.3.19. Excuse me. The master told us another of his extraordinary visions in Varanasi. So Varanasi, Banaras, Kashi, they are all pretty much one and the same thing. Many people take a boat trip to visit 5 holy spots in Varanasi, Manikarnika, and other places nearby that lie along the banks of the Ganges. One day, Mothur took the master on this boat trip. The main cremation ground of Varanasi is near Manikarnika. When Mothur's boat approached the Manikarnika Ghat, the air of the cremation ground was full of smoke, because many bodies were being cremated on the funeral pyres. The master's face expressed ecstatic joy at the sight, and the hairs of his body stiffened. He emerged from the covered part of the boat and walked over to the bow, where he went into a samadhi. Mothur's guide and the boatmen all ran to catch him, lest he fall into the water. But they did not need to do anything. The master remained standing, calm and motionless, with a wonderful smile on his face. The whole place appeared to be serene and holy. Mothur and Hridoy. Hridoy is Master's nephew who was Thakur's attendant for a long, long time. Mothur and Hridoy stood protectively nearby, but did not touch the Master. In astonishment, the boatmen gazed at this extraordinary figure. When the Master's ecstasy came to an end some time later, everyone disembarked at the Manikarnika Ghat, had their baths, performed rituals, and then returned to the boat to continue their journey. The Master then described his vision to Mothur and the others. So he's describing his vision at the Manikarnika Ghat. So within quotes, I saw a tall white figure with tawny matted hair steadily approach each funeral pyre in turn, carefully raise each individual soul from its cast-off body, and whisper into its ear the particular name of Brahman that liberates a soul. Seated on the opposite side of the power, the all-powerful Divine Mother Kali untied the gross, subtle, and causal knots of bondage created by each individual soul, thus sending the soul to the Absolute by opening the gate of liberation. Lord Vishwanath was blessing those souls by bestowing in an instant the experience of non-dual, infinite bliss that people can attain only after ages of concentration and austerity. The Pandits who were with Mothur verified this vision from their knowledge of the scriptures. They said to the Master, the Kashi Kanda mentions that Shiva confers nirvana on those who die at Varanasi, but does not explicitly state how your vision clearly elucidates how this is accomplished. Your visions and experiences have surpassed even the scriptural records. So you see what divine ecstasy Thakur was in. Okay, so as I said, Thakur also wanted to go to Varanasi because he wanted to meet the saints who used to live there. And the most famous of them at that time was Troilong Goswami. And Troilong Goswami was a very well-known yogi. The story goes that he never wore any piece of clothing. So he would be naked all the time. So once he was, I think, walking in the market or something like that, and because of indecency or whatever, the police caught him and sent him to jail. And this is summertime. Banaras is kind of North Indian plains. So summertime it gets very hot. So Troilong Goswami was in the jail feeling very hot. And the story goes that he thought, well, let me just get a little bit of the breeze of the Ganges. So because he was a great yogi, he kind of contracted his body, went out of this jail cell, and when they realized that this guy is not there, they were of course extremely nervous. Now what happened? How to search for him? And then after some time he came back and they didn't even know he went back into his cell. And so they asked him, what happened? Where did you go? He said, well, I just went for a little bit of fresh air. Let me just read once again couple of sentences about Thakur's experience with his conversation. It was not really a conversation, and I'll tell you why, or you will see why. Right, so okay, this is 4.3.20. During his stay in Varanasi, the Master visited Troilong Goswami and other famous holy men. He was pleased with Troilong Goswami and told us many stories about him. He said, that means Sri Ramakrishna said, I found in him, Troilong Goswami, I found in him the living manifestations of Vishwanath. Varanasi was sanctified and made vibrant by his presence. He was in an exalted state of knowledge. He had no body consciousness. The sand there gets so hot in the sun that no one can walk on it, but he lay on it comfortably. I cooked rice pudding. Thakur is saying, I cooked rice pudding and brought it with me to feed him. At that time, he couldn't speak. Trailanga Swami couldn't speak to me because he had taken a vow of silence. So I asked him by signs whether God was one or many. So Thakur said like this. And Trailanga Swami replied in the same manner, indicating that God is one, is known to be one when a person enters into the state of samadhi. But as long as there is any consciousness of I, you, Jiva, and the world, God is perceived as many. I pointed to him and told Hriday, in him you see the condition of a true knower of Brahman. Okay, so Thakur's meeting with Trailanga Swami, very inspiring. And Thakur, he enjoyed, or he loved to stay in Banaras so much that he didn't want to leave. But then, Thakur himself said, then I was reminded of my mother, Chandramani Devi, who was in Dakshineshwar. And so he said, well, how could I stay here? I have to take care of my mother. So that's what kind of was the impetus for him to leave Banaras. So from Banaras, they went to Allahabad. Allahabad, again, is Central India Plains. Allahabad is very famous pilgrimage site because it's the confluence of three rivers, the Ganga and the Yamuna and this now extinct Saraswati. So this confluence is a very sacred place. Thakur, people bathed there. Thakur also did so. Then they came back to Varanasi, Banaras, and then they went to Vrindāvan. And Vrindāvan, as you know, is the site which is associated with Ras Leela, Krishna Leela. So there are many places which people believe that Sri Krishna was there. For example, this is the Govardhan Hill, which is in mythology. There are many stories associated with it. So one can imagine Thakur's exaltation, spiritual state, when he visited these sites. And one day it so happened that it was kind of dusk, and this is 1868, and in India, in the kind of villages and hamlets, there is this tradition which to some extent is even present today. The cowherds, they take their cows for pasturing, and when the sun kind of is about to set, they bring these cows back. And so when these cows come back, what happens is, because they are kind of many of them walking at the same time, there's a little bit of kind of dust that comes out of the soil. And these particulates kind of, they become airborne. And the word in Sanskrit itself is godhuli. That means that the dust created by the cows. So one evening, there was a cowherd who was bringing back his cattle, and it was dusk time, and this godhuli, and Thakur went into ecstatic state because, of course, he identified completely with Krishna. So very, very inspiring experiences. So then, when they were done with Vrindāvan, then Mothur Babu said, well, let us go to Gaya. Gaya is another very famous pilgrimage site for Hindus. And the main reason many Hindus go to Gaya is because to what is known as Pindadan. So to kind of offer things to the soul of your parents and grandparents and ancestors. So Mothur Babu wanted to go to Gaya, but Thakur said, no, I will not go to Gaya. And then Thakur kind of explained. He said, I will not go to Gaya because what happened is, we know in Thakur's biography that Thakur's father, Khudiram, he was in Gaya when actually Thakur was conceived. Okay, so they named him Gangadhar because that's a name of Vishnu. So Thakur believed that if he went to Gaya, he won't be able to return from there. So he kind of declined. Right, so then this trip, about 4 months it took, they came back to Kolkata, and the next one is not at this time. This is much closer. This is Nabadwîpa in Bengal. This place is very famous because it is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we talked of Vrindāvan. One of the unique contributions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that he, 5 centuries before Thakur, 4 centuries before Thakur, he went to Vrindāvan, and in his divine inspiration he could identify the sites, that this is where Krishna had this Leela. Because at that time people had forgotten everything about the Krishna Leela, I mean the particular places. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the one who kind of resurrected those sites, if you may say so. So of course Thakur was very much inspired by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He mentioned about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu many times. So it's no wonder that he went to his birthplace. But let us read couple of lines about Thakur's views about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so this is 4.3.32. So the background to this is that Saradananda Maharaj is saying that, well, at that time many had some doubts about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's being an avatar. Okay, so they were trying to clarify their doubt. So they asked Thakur, and then this is what is the Thakur's reply. So to remove this doubt, some of us asked the master about it, whether Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an avatar or not. So in reply, Sri Ramakrishna said, previously I also thought that way. Chaitanya is not even alluded to in the Bhagavata and other Puranas, so how could he be an avatar? I thought the shaven-headed Vaishnavas had set him up as an avatar. At any rate, I did not believe it. Then I went to Nabadwîpa with Mothur. I thought that if Chaitanya were an avatar, there must be some signs of his manifestation and that I would recognize them. I looked around with the view to seeing his divine manifestation and visited the deities in the houses of senior Gosai and junior Gosai, but found nothing. Everywhere I saw wooden images of Chaitanya standing with raised arms. I felt dejected and wondered why I had come. When I was about to board the boat to return, Nabadwîpa is on the Ganges, so when I was about to board the boat to return, I had a wonderful vision of 2 beautiful teenaged boys, and they are Chaitanya and Nityananda. I had never seen such beauty before. Their complexions were as bright as molten gold, and they had halos round their heads. Smiling, they rushed towards me through the air, their arms raised. Immediately I cried out, "Here they come, here they come." No sooner had I uttered those words than they came near and entered here, pointing to his body. Entered here, and I fell down unconscious. I would have fallen into the water, but Hridaya was nearby and caught hold of me. Thus, I was shown many such things, and I became convinced that Chaitanya was a true avatar, a manifestation of divine power. Okay, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthplace. Right, so then we come to part 2, where, as I said, these are not really pilgrimage sites in the sense that they exist for a long time and many pilgrims have visited through the ages. These are sites that became pilgrimage sites for us meaning Sri Ramakrishna followers, because he sanctified them. Okay. So the first one being, of course, his birthplace, Kamarpukur, and we have heard so many stories of Sri Ramakrishna's Leela at Kamarpukur. Just last Tuesday, Bishop Paul also recounted some of those stories, so I will not get into that. Today, it's a center of the Ramakrishna mission, so we have a very beautiful temple, and his ancestral home is still preserved very well. Then, when Sri Ramakrishna was a teenager, at that time, because his father had died, the family was in terrible financial situation, and so Sri Ramakrishna's brother, Ramkumar, he decided to go to Kolkata and earn his living. And Ramkumar, that is, he became a priest at this place. This is known as Jhamapukur. This is, originally it used to be the palace of a Raja, Digambor Mitra, and Ramkumar was a priest here, and he also had his own Sanskrit school. It's called a toll in Bengali. So Ramkumar thought that by bringing Gadadhar to this place, he would learn these, how to officiate as a priest, and that would kind of sustain him. But when Sri Ramakrishna came to Jhamapukur, he was least interested in these rituals, and he kind of flatly said he's not going to do that, he's not going to follow them. So Ramkumar, of course, was very incensed, and so he said, this education will kind of help you lead your life in the future. And Ramakrishna uttered those famous words that this kind of bread-winning education is of no use to me. So, at Jhamapukur itself, we knew that this kind of regular priesthood is not meant for Sri Ramakrishna. And after Jhamapukur, we come to Dakshineshwar. Of course, this is the place where Sri Ramakrishna spent most of his time. So, the Leelas are infinite. I just want to recount one which is favorite of mine, and that is that when Narendranath, future Vivekananda, when he had started to come to Dakshineshwar and started to meet Sri Ramakrishna, but he wasn't kind of fully indoctrinated. And at that time, it so happened that Narendranath's father also passed away, and that family also fell into tremendous economic pressure. And Swamiji was kind of looking for jobs. He was working one day here, one day there, not finding any permanent job. So under tremendous stress. So then Narendranath thought that, well, let me ask Sri Ramakrishna, because he is a genuine man, and if he asks Divine Mother, if he asks Mother Kali, then perhaps my life would become a little more bearable. So he goes to Sri Ramakrishna and he says, could you please pray to the Divine Mother on my behalf? And of course, we all know Sri Ramakrishna says, well, how can I do it? This is your prayer, you go. And Narendranath makes a resolve that, okay, he will go and ask Kali to kind of make sure that his sustenance is kind of taken care of. And what happens? He goes and he meditates, and then when the time comes to ask, he asks for Gyan dao, Bhakti dao, Vivek dao, Boiragya dao, Agad Darshan dao. That means give me knowledge, give me devotion, give me Gyan dao, Bhakti dao, Vivek, give me discrimination, give me renunciation, and give me your uninterrupted vision. And so then he comes down, and Sri Ramakrishna, of course, knows everything, but still, he asks him, oh, did you ask? He says, no, I could not. And she says, oh, you fool, go back again. And so we know this happens 3 times. And at the end of it, then Sri Ramakrishna assures Narendranath that, okay, for your family, mota bhat and mota kapod, that means just the basic food and the basic necessity of clothes, that will not be an issue. And that kind of satisfies Narendranath. And then Thakur teaches him that very famous song that we have heard here also, Mahatwang Hitara. So what happens is that because this is late in the night, I mean, when it's early morning, Vivekananda, Narendranath goes to sleep. And then when some devotees come to meet Thakur, Thakur says, hey, Naren Kali meneche. So Thakur was very pleased that Narendranath has accepted Kali. So we have so many such leelas. When you go to the Dakshineshwar temple, I know many of you have visited, it's most of the days extremely crowded, but I have seen almost every time that I have gone is that even though this kind of the temple complex, the Kali temple complex is extremely crowded, Sri Ramakrishna's room is not that crowded. So if you go it's a very small room, it's kind of difficult to imagine how so much of Leela could take place in such a small room. Well, that kind of doubt is dispelled when you just cross over and go to Nahabad, which was where Holy Mother used to say. That's even smaller. And we will talk about Holy Mother and the pilgrimage sites associated with her next week. So we will leave the Nahabad for that. But all I'm trying to say is that you can, most of the time, find a place just near Thakur's cot, which is, of course, kind of fenced in. There is a barrier, but you can sit pretty much for as long as you wish. So Thakur's room is not that crowded. Right. So moving along from Dakshineshwar, as we heard from Vishwanath that in 1885, by about, you can say, early summer, late spring, early summer, the doctors had, first they had doubts, and then they had kind of diagnosed that Sri Ramakrishna was suffering from throat cancer. And they used to call Rohini, that is the Sanskrit name or the Ayurvedic name. Anyway, so then they decided that for medical attention, he needed to be brought to Kolkata. And so the first place where Thakur came, not really the first place, he stayed in one room, one house for a couple of days. He hated it, so then went to Balaram Bose's house, then came back. This is the house where he stayed for about 70 days. So very short time. But again, there's lots of Leela associated with this place, with this house. This is the house where Dr. Mohindranath Chharkar used to come pretty much on a daily basis. He was the main, very well-known homeopathic doctor, and he was Thakur's primary physician during this stay. And there were many conversations which are very fascinating. But I think the most important Leela for us would be the Kali Puja. So in 1885, on the day of Kali Puja, the devotees, they gathered at this place and they wanted to, of course, pray to Kali. But Girish Ghosh, he had this, I don't know how, this impulse or whatever you call it. He said, well, why to worship Kali when we have the Kali embodied in personhood? So he offered flowers to Sri Ramakrishna at Sri Ramakrishna's feet and sang, and then all the devotees did so. And so this Kali Puja is very important event in Sri Ramakrishna's, in our kind of following of his life. So, though a very short time, a place which is very important for us followers. And next week when we talk of Holy Mother, we will talk about how Holy Mother also, she was in this very house. It's a very small house. If you go, you will again think as to how could so many people live in this small of a house. And this is, today still, they maintain this second floor room. That's the Sri Ramakrishna's room. It's a shrine. And this is the terrace, bottom left. And we'll talk about it next week because it is associated with some of Holy Mother's Leelas. Okay. So he stayed, as I said, very short time in Shampukur. And then we come to Kashipur, which, as we know, is where Kalpataru, 1st January 1886. And you can't read, but on this top right building, there is engraved on the wall that is facing us in Bengali, Tumade Chaitanya ho. That's the famous saying of Sri Ramakrishna, that may you all be illumined. On Kalpataru, and this is the tree where Sri Ramakrishna, of course, is coming from the house to he was walking, and then the devotees, they kind of greeted him there. That is where this Leela took place. Right. So then we move to another house which is very frequently visited by Sri Ramakrishna followers, and that is the Balaram Mandir, Balaram Bosh's house. Sri Ramakrishna used to call it my fort in Kolkata, and he visited umpteen times. And Balaram Bosh was, in fact, one of the, you can say, the most sincere disciples, in the sense that he helped financially, hospitality-wise, you name it. So, a very famous, and many Leelas associated with Holy Mother as well, and we'll talk about this next week when we talk about Holy Mother. Today, Balaram Mandir, the most crowded day is the day of the Ratha Yatra in Bengal and in Odisha, in the Jagannath temple. There is this famous festival, Rath Yatra festival, where the mythology is that Lord Jagannath goes to his aunt's place for 14 days. And so they have this cart. Maybe you can see just a kind of a portion of it. So this cart is dragged. So it's called a Rath, a car festival it's called in English. And so and during Balaram Bosh's time and during Thakur's time, they used to do this ritual. They used to drag this cart along the main road and then bring it back. So even today this is followed. And this day, Rath Yatra day, this tremendous crowd in this house. But there's also the shrine, and there's also a very nice, if you can call it a museum. It's not exactly a museum. It's a room where kind of there are pictures all around, and very, very informative. If you visit this place, not only would you get a feel of the atmosphere, but it's also, there are also some information that is not easy to get anywhere else. Anyway, so okay. From Balaram Mandir, we come to a very nondescript house. This is all what is called North Kolkata, North Calcutta. This is known as Kashishwar Mitra house. This is the house where, for the one and only time, Sri Ramakrishna and Rabindranath Tagore, they met. Of course, they didn't meet really. Rabindranath Tagore was a kid. This was on 2nd May 1883. Kashishwar Mitra used to be a Brahmo follower. So the Brahmo devotees used to gather at this place. Thakur was invited. And we learn in the gospel, we read in the gospel, that Rabindranath, he played the piano that day. What song he played, we don't know. But the interesting thing about this house is that, of course, this is Brahmo devotee's house. Kashishwar Mitra, he was a follower of Sri Ramakrishna, or he liked Sri Ramakrishna, but when this event occurred, he had passed away. His sons, they weren't really that sincere. So, for whatever reason, they had invited Sri Ramakrishna, but they were not really taking care of him. So much so that Sri Ramakrishna was accompanied by Swami Brahmananda, Rakhal. So Rakhal grew so mad, he said to Thakur, let's go. I mean, these people, they are ill-treating us. They're not even asking us anything. So let's go. And Thakur, the practical person that he is, he said, if we go now, if we go back to Dakshineshwar, what will we eat? Where will we get food? So we can't. So we have to kind of bear this. And so Rakhal, of course, couldn't do anything. Then, in those days, and even today, I guess, if you invite somebody like a saint, like Sri Ramakrishna, who does not carry money, so what typically happens is when the time comes for the person to leave, you bring a carriage, you kind of get a carriage and then pay the carriage fare so that Sri Ramakrishna can go back to Dakshineshwar. So this son of Kashishwar Mitra, he brought a carriage, but he didn't pay the full carriage fare. He paid only a kind of, like you can say, 1/4 of the typical carriage fare. So, of course, this is something which Rakhal was extremely mad at. But the interesting thing is that today, I mean, after so many generations, the family that is kind of taking care of this house today, this generation, they, when they came to know about this, they felt very bad. And today, on that day, they send fruits and offerings and things in kind of, you can say, apology. So, very interesting. And I know you can't really read this. This plaque here, it basically says that this is where Sri Ramakrishna came, and Tagore was also there. Again, so this is all thanks to Prithvish. He took me to these places. I mean, he is an encyclopedia, if you don't know. And so these, the family that maintains this house, they are, I think the Prithvish knows them very well. So not everybody, if you kind of just go, you may not find anybody and you may not be able to enter. So thanks to Prithvish, we were able to not only enter, but spend a good amount of time in this main hall. Right, so I think I'll wrap up. So from there we go to another house which is very famous for us, I mean, for devotees of Sri Ramakrishna. This is Keshav Sen's house. And Keshav Sen, as we know, was a very big leader of the Brahmo Samaj. And he, of course, liked Sri Ramakrishna a lot. He came to Dakshineshwar many times. But the reason I bring this is because, well, if you look at Sri Ramakrishna's photographs, there are basically three. One, which we always see, this is at Dakshineshwar. And this one, where Sri Ramakrishna is standing and Hriday is actually holding him because he's in Samadhi. And Hriday, I mean, of course, Hriday or Rakhal or whoever, they always had to be an attendant because he could go into Samadhi any moment, and at that time he would lose body consciousness. So Hriday did human service in that sense. Though Hriday's biography is not something that is very impressive, because even after being close to his uncle for so long, he still had some problems, which we'll not get into. But anyway, so what I was trying to say is we have three pictures. One, this taken at Dakshineshwar, one this, and the third one was taken at a studio where, if you remember, this is Thakur on a pillar and his arm is resting. So there are these three. So this is one of the three. So this place becomes very important for us. And of course, there are two more photographs which very few people have seen, because they were after Thakur passed away. So when they took Thakur to the cremation ghat, Mohinderlal Sarkar, he paid a photographer some money to take, and there are 2 pictures of Thakur's body, and we don't really show that. I mean, very few books you will see that. But anyway, so there are 3 pictures. This is one of the 3, so that's why very important. This is known as Lily Cottage, Keshav Sen's house, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting that there, as best as we know, there was a 4th photograph. Ramchandra Datta, he commissioned a photographer to take Thakur's picture, and that person did take Thakur's picture, and Ramchandra Datta then took a print and brought it to Thakur, and Thakur saw and said, "Is this me?" I mean, he was so furious that Ramchandra Datta tore this and the negative, threw it into the Ganges. So there was a 4th photograph which none of us has ever seen. All right, so I think it's 8:27. So I'll just skip to the last one, which again is of extreme importance to devotees, because this is the house where M lived. And this is kind of a shrine in a way. M actually lived in 2 places. The other place being what is known as the Morton Institution, which is a dilapidated, you can't really go. I mean, Prithvish and I, we tried to go. The gatekeeper didn't allow us to enter. It's very poor shape. It's very disheartening to see that. But this is where he used to stay, and his generations thereafter, they still maintain this place. They stay there. His great-grandson, whom we met, they take care of this house. This house has a shrine in the top floor, which would be the 3rd floor. And not only the shrine, there are still some memorabilia. There is, I don't know if you can see, there is this, what is known as moleskin coat that Thakur used to wear in the winter, shoes, Thakur's shoes. So when you go there, it's a whole different atmosphere. And as I said, this is not a place where throngs of devotees go, so it's usually not at all crowded. So you can sit in that shrine for as long as you want. The family has no objection, and they welcome it. And in the inset, we have what, by the way, this is not a picture taken by me, I took it from the web. In the inset, we have 1 page from M's diary. So as you know, the Kathamrita, or the Gospel, it started as M's diary. M used to write things in his diaries so that he could later on kind of use it for his spiritual practices. But then once he decided to write, M's notes were very cryptic, but he had a fantastic memory. So it's possible that this 1 page of M's diary later on became tens of pages of the manuscript of the Kathamrita. So again, when you see that in that room, it's very inspiring. Okay, I think it's 8:30, so I will stop here and let us meditate for 30 seconds, and then we'll have questions. Questions? Yes, Charlie.
I'm wondering if you said Chaitanya rediscovered the sites where Lord Krishna was. Has archaeology borne out or confirmed any of those sites?
I don't know. No. I doubt it.
No.
Because, archaeology it's difficult for archaeology to verify. I don't know, but I doubt. I don't know. The Dakshineshwar? In Dakshineshwar. This was Rani Rashmani, Mothur's mother-in-law, And Rani, she was a very wealthy lady. She had a dream, and she had a vision in this dream where Kali implores her to build a temple in her name. And so she commissioned this temple at a huge cost, which is, in today's currency, it might be millions of dollars. It took about 4 or 5 years, and it was inaugurated in 1855. That's when Ramkumar, Thakur's brother, became the first priest. So there's this wonderful story associated with it that the Kali there, for whatever reason, it's a clay image, so one hand broke. And that was, of course, sacrilegious. And so the pundits, they debated for hours what needed to be done, what rites needed to be performed, and all that. And Thakur basically said, why are you so much worried if the hand is broken? Just fix it. And that, of course, didn't go well with the pundits, but so there are many stories associated with this temple. So Rani Rashmoni is you can say, the patron. Yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah.
What is it like inside? Is it magnificently high ceilings?
No. Not very high. There is, when you come, let's say, when you come to the main complex, there is where you have this, the metal detectors and all that. You go through that, and from there you climb, I guess, 10 steps. 10 steps. Anybody remembers? So the main level, there we have a big kind of a square where people who come to offer puja to the Kali, they bring this incense and this flower basket and things like that, and that's where they put the incense. So I think it's about 10 steps, not half a flight, maybe half a floor. And then you come to this kind of the upper level, and from that upper level, that's where you then climb another 4 or 5 steps, and then you come to the main shrine level. Yeah, the picture is not very clear because the ceiling, from the picture it looks very high, but it's not. Oh, I'm sorry. Other direction. Other direction. Okay. So the picture could be a little misleading because the picture basically suggests that that's the ceiling, but it's not. I think the ceiling is much lower. Because when you go in front of the Kali, the roof is just about this much high from there. It's not very. And there is so much rush that you can't really stay in front. You can't even look at the Kali very long. They keep pushing you. They are interested in taking that offering, and they give you a little prasad, and this constantly pushing you to move for the next. So, I have visited many times. I haven't really, but I was not at all awed by this high ceiling. No, it's nothing like that. Yes, Abhijit.
Yeah, I just had a comment. One of the reasons that's been talked about in the gospel about that incident that Rakhal wanted to leave that place. And Sri Ramakrishna said that, where will I go now? We should eat.
Yeah.
But the other thing he also said that if we leave, and that will bring bad results.
Yes. To them. Yeah. So Thakur, of course, in his infinite grace, because as we heard from Bishop Paul last Tuesday, if he would utter something kind of unfavorable to that family would suffer a lot. So Thakur definitely didn't want that. So, yes, he did mention that not only should we not leave because of this thing, but we shouldn't be responsible for ill fortune to the family if we kind of leave in a huff. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Abhijit. Yes, Yuvashish.
So there is a mention in Kamarhati of a picture of Gauranga that was in Thakur's room in Dakshineshwar, and he asks that be given to to M, the gospel recorder of the gospel. I think it's a picture of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he also sometimes in the past says that you were in that crowd.
Yes, yes.
Is that there in?
No, I didn't see that picture. I didn't notice it, so I don't know. But Vishwanath, did you see that picture? I don't remember seeing that. Any other question? Thank you so much. Do you have any announcements or anything?
No class on Friday.
Okay. No class on Friday, and then
There's still meditation Thursday morning, just because it's Thanksgiving, it still goes on. Meditation Thursday morning, tea Thursday night.
About Sunday.
Thanksgiving doesn't matter. Come for meditation, come for art.
What?
Friday morning meditation art. We don't stop for holidays.
so next week, next Tuesday, it will be kind of the same template in that we will look at the pilgrimage sites that Holy Mother visited, and then some places associated with Holy Mother which have become pilgrimage sites for us. Same template.